There was once a quiet village called Aberney. The village stood between wide green fields and a slow brown river. The people of Aberney were farmers, potters, hunters, and traders. They woke up when the rooster crowed and slept when the moon rose high. They believed that the land was a gift from God and that their ancestors watched over their farms. Among the villagers lived a man named Kofi. Kofi was not rich, but he was known as the hardest-working farmer in Aberney. He was tall and thin, with strong arms from many years of digging the soil. His wife, Oma, was kind and gentle. She sold vegetables in the market and always greeted everyone with a warm smile. Kofi and Oma had no children. For many years they had prayed and waited, but none came. Some people in the village whispered about it. But Oma would always say softly, "God knows the best time for everything." Kofi owned a small piece of land at the edge of the village. The soil there was dark and rich. Each year, he planted maize, yams, beans, and groundnuts. He worked from sunrise until sunset. Even when his back ached and his hands were rough, he did not complain. One dry season, the village faced a terrible problem. The rains did not come when they were supposed to. The river grew thin and weak. The earth cracked open like broken clay pots. The elders gathered under the big baobab tree to talk. Elder Kojo, who was the oldest man in Aberney, spoke slowly. "If the rains do not come soon, our harvest will fail. We must use our food wisely." The people nodded. Fear sat quietly in their hearts. Kofi listened carefully. When he returned home, Oma asked, "What did the elders say?" "They said we must prepare for hard days," Kofi replied. "We must save what we have." Oma looked at the small basket of maize in their hut. It was not much. Still, when the planting season came, Kofi did not give up. He woke up earlier than ever. He dug deeper holes in the soil. He carried water from the river in clay pots to pour on his crops. It was heavy work, but he did it without rest. Some villagers laughed at him. "Why are you wasting your strength?" one man asked. "The sun will burn everything." Kofi only smiled. "If I do not try, how will the land know I trust it?" he said. Weeks passed. The sun was fierce. Many crops in the village dried up. But on Kofi's farm, small green leaves began to appear. The plants were not strong, but they were alive. Oma saw them and clapped her hands with joy. "Your hard work is speaking," she said. Kofi shook his head. "It is not my work alone. The land is kind." Soon, the rains finally came. They fell softly at first, then heavily. The people danced in the rain. The drums were beaten. Songs rose into the sky. When harvest time came, Kofi's farm was full. Tall maize stood proudly. The yam mounds were heavy and round. His beans climbed high on their sticks. Other farms had little to gather, but Kofi's harvest was rich. Villagers began to visit him. "Kofi," said a woman named Abina, "my store is empty. My husband is sick. Can you help us?" Kofi looked at Oma. She nodded gently. He filled a basket with maize and gave it to Abina. The next day, another man came. "Kofi, I have nothing to feed my wife." Again, Kofi gave. Soon, many people came to his door. Each time, Kofi shared from his harvest. Oma watched quietly. One evening she asked, "My husband, have you kept enough for us?" Kofi smiled softly. "We have each other. That is enough." Oma's eyes filled with tears. She knew he was kind, but she also knew they had little. As weeks passed, the baskets in their hut became fewer. The yams were almost gone. The maize was nearly finished. One night, Oma cooked the last handful of beans. She placed the bowl before Kofi. "Eat," she said. Kofi looked at her. "And you?" "I have already eaten at the market," she said. Kofi did not know that Oma had not eaten at all. The next morning, Kofi felt weak. His legs trembled as he walked to the farm. But he continued to work. He prepared the land again for the next planting season. The elders noticed that Kofi had grown thinner. Elder Kojo called him one day. "My son, why do you look like a dry leaf?" Kofi bowed respectfully. "I am well, elder." But the elder saw the truth in his eyes. That evening, the elders gathered again. They spoke about Kofi's kindness. They spoke about how he had fed the village when no one else could. "He never kept enough for himself," said Abina, wiping her eyes. "If not for him, my husband would have died." The elders decided to visit Kofi's farm together. The next morning, the whole village walked to his land. They saw him bending slowly, planting seeds with shaking hands. "Kofi!" Elder Kojo called. Kofi turned in surprise. He tried to stand straight, but he swayed. Oma ran forward to support him. Elder Kojo stepped closer. "Why did you not tell us you were hungry?" Kofi looked at the ground. "How could I eat while my neighbors had nothing?" he asked quietly. The villagers were silent. Shame filled their hearts. They had accepted his gifts again and again, but they had not asked if he had enough. Abina stepped forward with a basket of yams. "This is for you," she said. Another man brought maize. A woman brought groundnuts. Soon, many baskets were placed before Kofi and Oma. Oma began to cry. Elder Kojo raised his staff. "From today, we will not allow one man to carry the burden of the whole village. We will farm together. We will share together." The villagers agreed. From that day on, they worked as one. When planting season came, everyone helped on each farm. When harvest came, the food was divided fairly. Kofi was no longer alone in his struggle. But the story does not end there. The next year, the rains were good. The harvest was strong in every field. The village was full of laughter again. During the harvest festival, the people gathered to give thanks. Drums sounded across the village. Women danced with bright cloths tied around their waists. Men sang old songs of the ancestors. Elder Kojo stood before the crowd. "Today, we honor a man who taught us a lesson without speaking loudly. A man who gave until he had nothing left. A man whose hunger opened our eyes." He called Kofi forward. Kofi walked slowly, still thin but stronger than before. "You fed us when we were weak," the elder said. "But we forgot to feed you. Your sacrifice has taught us unity." The villagers cheered. Oma held Kofi's hand tightly. That evening, for the first time in many months, Kofi sat before a full bowl of food. There was roasted maize, boiled yams, fresh beans, and sweet palm wine. Oma smiled at him. "Taste your harvest," she said. Kofi took a bite of maize. He closed his eyes. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "It tastes different," he whispered. "Why?" Oma asked. "Because this time it is shared," he replied. The moon rose high over Abani. The baobab tree stood tall as it had for many years. The river flowed gently once more. From that day, the people of Abani never forgot the lesson. They learned that kindness must walk hand in hand with wisdom. They learned that helping others is good, but no one should suffer in silence. They learned that a village grows strong not when one man gives everything, but when everyone gives something. Kofi continued to farm for many more years. He and Oma grew old together. Though they never had children of their own, the whole village cared for them like family. Whenever a young farmer worked too hard and forgot to rest, the elders would say, "Remember Kofi, the farmer who never tasted his own harvest." And the farmer would slow down and share wisely. This is the lesson the story carries like a calabash filled with water. Kindness is powerful, but wisdom guides kindness. Sharing is beautiful, but unity makes it strong. And no one should carry the burden of the village alone. Even today, when the wind moves gently across the fields, the people of Abani say it carries the whisper of Kofi's quiet courage. And they remember. The years passed like slow-moving clouds. Kofi's hair turned grey. Oma's steps became softer and slower. But every morning, they still woke before the rooster. They still thanked God for the day. They still walked together to the farm. Now, the farm was no longer worked by Kofi alone. The village had kept its promise. During planting season, strong men and women came with hoes resting on their shoulders. They laughed as they dug the soil. They sang as they dropped seeds into the ground. Alma would sit under a small tree at the edge of the farm and prepare cool water for everyone. She would say, "Drink first, then work. The body must be cared for." Kofi would smile and nod. One afternoon, as the sun shone gently, a stranger arrived in Abney. He was a tall man with a long walking stick. His clothes were dusty from travel. He greeted the people kindly and asked for a place to rest. In Abney, no traveler was turned away. The elders welcomed him and offered him water and food. When the stranger learned about the village working together on the farms, he was surprised. "In the places I have come from," he said, "each person keeps his harvest for himself. When trouble comes, they blame one another." Elder Kojo replied, "We once lived like that too. But we learned a lesson from one man." The stranger's eyes grew curious. "Tell me about this man." They pointed to Kofi, who was slowly tying maize stalks into bundles. "That is him," Elder Kojo said. The stranger watched quietly. He saw how the villagers respected Kofi. He saw how Alma always walked beside him. That evening, the stranger sat with Kofi near the small fire outside his hut. "I have heard your story," the stranger said gently. "Why did you give so much when you had so little?" Kofi looked at the fire. The flames danced softly. "When I was young," Kofi began, "my father told me something. He said, 'The land gives to those who give to others.' I believed him. When my neighbors were hungry, I could not close my door." The stranger nodded slowly. "But you almost lost your strength." Kofi smiled. "Yes. And I learned something too. Even a strong tree needs water. If it dries up, it cannot give shade." Alma, who was listening, added softly, "That is why we must care for one another." The stranger stayed in Abney for many days. He joined the farmers in their work. He listened to the elders' stories. He watched how the village shared food and labor. Before he left, he gathered the villagers under the baobab tree. "I travel from place to place," he said. "I have seen villages broken by pride and selfishness. But here, I see unity. Guard it carefully. Do not forget the lesson you learned." The villagers promised they would not forget. After the stranger left, something unexpected happened. The next season brought heavy rains. At first, everyone was happy. But the rains did not stop. The river rose higher and higher. It began to spill over its banks. One night, thunder shook the sky. Lightning flashed brightly. Water rushed into the lower farms near the river. Kofi's farm was one of them. When morning came, the villagers saw that much of the young crops had been washed away. Alma held her breath. "All your seeds," she whispered. Kofi looked at the muddy field. His heart felt heavy, but he did not cry. "The land gives," he said slowly, "and sometimes it takes." The elders gathered again. Fear returned to the village. "If the floods continue," one woman said, "we may lose everything." This time, Kofi stood up to speak. "Many years ago," he said, "I tried to carry the burden alone. It made me weak. Now we are one village. Let us think together." The villagers listened carefully. They decided to build small walls of earth along the riverbank to stop the water from spreading too far. They worked day and night, carrying soil in baskets. Even Alma helped by bringing water and food to those who labored. Slowly, the river returned to its normal path. Some crops were lost, but many were saved. When harvest time came again, it was not as rich as before, but it was enough. During the next harvest festival, Elder Kojo spoke once more. "Trouble will always visit us," he said. "Drought may come. Floods may rise. But when we stand together, we remain standing." The people cheered. Later that night, as the drums beat and people danced, Alma sat beside Kofi. "Are you tired?" she asked. "Yes," Kofi answered honestly. "But it is a good tired." Alma laughed softly. "You once worked alone until you almost fell. Now you work with many and rest when you must." Kofi nodded. "I have learned that sacrifice is good, but silence can be dangerous. If I had spoken sooner, perhaps I would not have grown so weak." Alma placed her hand over his. "You were brave in giving. Now you are brave in receiving. Kofi looked at her with deep love. And you were brave in standing beside me. Years continued to pass. Elder Kojo eventually grew too old to walk. Before he died peacefully in his sleep, he called the villagers together one last time. Never forget, he whispered, a village is like a basket. If one strand breaks, the basket becomes weak. Care for each strand. After his passing, the villagers planted a young baobab tree near the river in his memory. Kofi and Oma also grew very old. One quiet evening, as the sun painted the sky orange and gold, Kofi sat outside his hut, watching the fields. The maize swayed gently in the breeze. Birds sang as they flew home to their nests. Oma sat beside him. Do you regret anything? She asked softly. Kofi thought for a long time. I regret only one thing, he said. I regret that I did not allow others to help me sooner. Oma smiled. But because of that, the village learned. Kofi nodded slowly. Soon after, Kofi became very weak. The years of hard work had taken their toll. The villagers took turns bringing food and sitting with him. They told him stories and reminded him of all he had done. One evening, as the moon rose full and bright, Kofi took Oma's hand. The harvest is ready, he whispered. Oma understood. She held his hand tightly. Kofi closed his eyes peacefully and did not wake again. The village mourned deeply. Men and women wept openly. They buried him near his farm, where the soil he loved rested quietly. Oma lived for a few more years. She often visited his resting place and spoke softly to him. The village still remembers, she would say. They still share. They still work together. When Oma also passed away, the villagers buried her beside Kofi. Seasons continued to change. New elders rose. New farmers planted seeds. But every harvest festival, one story was always told. They would gather under the growing baobab tree near the river. The drums would quiet. The youngest elder would begin. There was once a farmer who gave until he had nothing left. He fed his neighbors but forgot to feed himself. His sacrifice opened our eyes. His weakness taught us strength. And they would tell the story of Kofi. They would remind one another. Help others, but do not hide your pain. Share your harvest, but keep enough to stand strong. Work hard, but allow others to walk beside you. Because love is not only in giving. Love is also in accepting help. And so, the village of Abani continued to live in unity. When drought threatened, they prepared together. When floods came, they built together. When harvest arrived, they celebrated together. And in the quiet whisper of the wind moving through the maize fields, it seemed as if Kofi's gentle voice still spoke. No one should carry the burden alone. That is the story of the farmer who never tasted his own harvest until his village learned to taste it with him. And the lesson remains clear like the river after the rains. Kindness must be wise. Sacrifice must be shared. And a true harvest is not measured only by the food in your barn, but by the love in your village. Thank you for listening. What is your view about this story? Let us know in the comment section. Kindly like, comment, and subscribe to our channel.